Hello, welcome to Silver Filers. My name's Emily Overton, and I'm excited today to have Daragh O Brien on Silver Filers with us. Hi, Daragh.
Hi, Emily. Good to be here
um, why do you think you're here, Daragh?
because I'm the only person you know who would do a recording at 20 past 9 in the morning.
Hang on a minute. That was your time. That was your time.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was not my timings. I was cursing you at this.
Now,
Oh God.
why am I here? For some deluded reason, you think I know things and you'd like me to share those things with people.
Isn't there's a phrase about that, isn't there? It's like a drink and I know things. Is it Game of Thrones?
I don't know. I didn't watch Game of Thrones. I have hobbies.
You've never watched Game of Thrones? Oh God. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, moving on from that before I start to cry. It's brilliant. I didn't get into it for the first few seasons, but I caught up with everyone else afterwards. Anyways, um, yeah, so the whole idea behind Silver Filers was that the filers being anyone deal with information. So it didn't mean that you had to be a filing clerk or someone like specifically touching physical records. It just meant you had to be dealing with some kind of information. And the silver part meaning that you've been in it 25 years.
Yeah.
So let's hit on that one in terms of what did you do? What like how long have you been in it? What was your first job? Those kind of give us a bit of a spiel about who you are.
Okay, spiel about who I am. I'm just a boy looking at some data in an organization, wondering what the. Um,
I did tell Dara that he could swear, but
I'm being polite. Not summer of. Well, see, I need to go back even before my first job. As I've always been interested in data as a thing and process stuff, even though I didn't realize that's what it was back in the mid 90s. And friends of mine were running their own software company. They were computer science undergrads. They graduated and set up a software company. They needed someone to help them translate business stuff into software and software stuff into business. So I kind of traded my brain for learning how to code and things like that back then. From there, I ended up working almost at the same time,
can we
overlapping.
can we go with some timings that we're talking about? Well, like what years are we talking about here?
1996,
Sorry, I missed that.
not 1996.
Okay.
1997. 1997, I started in the phone company, ostensibly working as a call center team leader, but very quickly ended up running all the data for the call center and project and program managed implementation of call center predictive dialer systems and data integrated reporting systems using crystal reports with web-based delivery in 1997, which
Wow.
was rocket science. The big five consultancy I was working with didn't think it could be done until I turned the monitor around in a meeting and said, I've already done it. From there, ended up working on Y2K. Then we moved into single view of customer, the head of customer data, single view of customer strategy for the phone company. Then became deputy head of regulatory assurance, which was the part of regulatory that didn't meet the regulator. We were the internal police and special forces who went around and making sure there was nothing for the regulator ever to
Ooh,
find.
special forces. Did you have an outfit?
You've heard the term they know where the bodies are buried. It was our job to bury the bodies. We made sure that under telecommunications law, things like billing errors, we couldn't have systemic billing errors. Therefore, every month we had to identify and find any large scale billing errors and eliminate them, fix them within a billing cycle, which meant we had a 15-day find to fix window, 5 days to deploy the fix, and then 5 days to make sure the fix was working before bills issued on a monthly basis. So it was just a little bit high pressure. But from there, from all of that, I was very heavily involved in data quality, data governance, data protection ended up falling under my remit from an operational perspective. And being the telecoms industry, we also had the e-privacy directive stuff as well, all of which from an operational perspective was falling under my remit because given I had a law degree, the degree in business and law, and I had experience as an Oracle DBA, and I had ran I ran the data quality function for the phone company. Basically, I was the go-to person for all things data that emerged technology.
Data man.
Yeah, it was my gift. It was my curse. And then I had a frank exchange of views and creative differences with my former employer. And in 2009, set up Castlebridge. Branched out as a solo act, and now I've got a team, a small army working with me on
Gonna
various
give a
projects.
shout out to your team.
Pardon?
You want to give a shout out to your team?
Well, given you're on it, I suppose I have to. You're part of our associate team. So we have our core consultants team, and then we have our associates who we work with as well on projects. And we are look that there are one or two things I probably want to talk to you about in the next couple of weeks with one of our clients, Emily, but I have to keep that on the down low.
So your core team, your consultant team, who are the team that you have at Castlebridge?
Well, we've got Peter, my operations director, who has background in management consulting and research with companies like Frost Sullivan, people like that. So he's kind of fairly low key. Catherine, my erstwhile number two, co-author of the book, and Emily is fangirling. Basically, I'm here because you couldn't get Catherine. Let's face it. And then we got Owen, one of our in-house legal team, and Josh, who's one of our PhD candidates going through a research program with Trinity. He's basically a trainee consultant. So it's all go with the core team, and then on the associates team, we've got people, friends. Interestingly, a lot of our associates are former clients. They're people who we've worked with as the purchaser, who, when they've changed roles, have come and liked the way we work and have wanted to align and work with us. So there's a couple of people in that regard. And then there's various ragtag misfits who we've picked up along the way. So it's an interesting mix of backgrounds, experiences, and insight. Like everything from your good self to someone who worked for the second largest public sector employer in the United Kingdom, and I can't actually just name his job specifically.
But when you were talking about ragtag bunch, Pat, we're talking about you.
No, we're not talking about Pat. Pat didn't work for the second largest public sector employer, but Pat is also he's one of our emeritus consultants, because he actually is a silver flyer, because he is very, very white. I'm trying to catch up with him, as you can see.
Yeah. It's not even like silver fox. It's white, literally white.
Yeah.
How does he do it? Do you think he dyes it?
I couldn't possibly speculate. That could be verging onto data relating to health, which would be special category data. Therefore, we cannot disclose
it. And we talked about no defamation as well. So, okay. So, you talked about the fact that you went to university briefly, and that's where you got your degree, because I don't think you can get it anywhere else.
I have a very high quality color printer here. I could probably make a degree for myself, but actually getting one, I had to slog in the trenches for 4 years.
Ouch. I have done the university route and still to this day wondering why. But there we have it. So I'm just looking down I've got a list of questions to my side that I kind of scribbled down to it, so I can kind of make sure that I stay on track. And some of the things that I quite enjoy talking about are the things like, what has kept you going?
Apart from coffee and alcohol, this stuff's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's.
But why do you think it's really important? Because I'm agreeing with you.
There's two aspects to all of this. It's really important for organizations, because organizations piss immense amounts of money up against the wall every year with poor data management, poor data quality, poor data governance, sloppy physical records management, sloppy unstructured records management. The amount of time and money that organizations just waste. And that's why when everyone was jumping up and down about 4% of turnover fines for GDPR, I was going, dude, they're pissing 30% up against the wall and they don't even notice or care. This isn't going to register with them. But also it matters to people, because when mistakes happen, they have significant implications, ramifications for data subjects in the world, but in an organization. Like, this is what I keep hammering on. Like, there's a lot of a lot of people out there in the world going to beat up on regulators, beat up on companies, beat up on organizations doing things wrong. You have to bear in mind there's always someone in the organization who was trying to do it right or thought they were doing it right. And because management didn't think about the data properly, because management didn't have their ducks in a row and manage that asset effectively, that person is getting hammered and their morale is getting absolutely kicked out from under them. I've seen it on call center teams with complaint calls coming in for completely avoidable things. And the first 300 of those, you chalk it up to experience. By the 1,000th, it's just grinding you down. And if anyone running a call center wants to understand why the churn in their call center is high, the answer is your metrics suck and the data is bad. And they're two things you need to tackle.
Oh, that's really interesting. I never thought about bringing it down to that. I have done talks on things like the root cause of major incidents and things like that is pretty much always down to records management. You can find anything within
the Titanic. The root cause of the Titanic was a change of spec in the rivets to reduce cost.
Yeah.
And no one checked to make sure the rivets were actually going to.
I didn't know about the Titanic.
And the temperature. Yeah, it was apparently it's the tensile strength of the rivets. The rivets popped under cold temperatures. They shattered.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's one of the reasons why the Titanic happened. It was one of the key root causes, apparently.
I mean, there's one thing that I've always said about some of these things. It hit an iceberg at the end of the day, but its safety measures, I'm assuming, were not good enough because of those rivets. So the fact that you could have closed off a chamber would have actually helped them save themselves. It probably could have still sunk, to be honest, but it would have gone a long way to stopping it from happening. Had the data about the rivets been accurate.
Well, had people not cut corners and shaved cost. And if you look at what we do, Emily, everything we find, that technical debt or process debt or governance debt, is someone on a project going, ooh, that's going to cost us a tenner more or 5 days more on the project. Let's leave that till later. We'll do the documentation in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, something explodes and there is no documentation.
We didn't go back to that, did we?
But by then, the person who made the decision has moved on to another role or to another company.
With that in mind, would you inspire the next generation to come into working with data, knowing what you know now?
You don't have a choice.
Okay.
Anyone who is going through school now, going through university now, who thinks they are not going to be elbows deep in data, needs to quit and go open a bean farm somewhere. But even then, you're going to be dealing with yield data, tariff data, markets data.
I'm talking about people. If you were to inspire people to come into our profession and managing data, kind of like looking on the people who are potentially doing it wrong, would you inspire people to come into doing what we do now?
Yeah. What I would actually turn that around, Emily, is that people who aren't doing what we do need to start doing what we do. Because that would reduce the need for people. Like, ultimately, as I keep saying to clients, I'd like clients to be in a position where they can fire us because the problem isn't there anymore.
That's one of the key things that I use with my consulting and my subscription is that I say to people, I'm going to teach you how to do this so that you can take it away and not need me. Because I don't want to be here forevermore. I get bored. That's why I'm a consultant. I want to hop around and do different things.
I have a short attention span. I like finding new and interesting problems. The team like finding new and interesting problems. And the good news is that we get lots of those sorts of problems coming through, but it's much better when clients are able to deal with the mundane, normal stuff, the day-to-day stuff themselves. But why should people get into this? It's fun. You learn a shitload of really interesting stuff about data, about technology, but most importantly about people. This is not about data.
They
Boring.
also get to hang out with us.
We're trying to encourage them.
Oh,
Yeah, you get to hang out with some cool people. I pretty much most of my really good friends that I've made since college, I've made through not necessarily work, but through the network of people in the data world. It's a really small international community at the level, kind of, particularly when you've been at it as long as as long as I have.
I'm just
There
trying to think
is
if I actually have any friends outside the industry. That's why I went blank a bit. I was be like, most of the people that I know actually are in the business.
even RM Dog is in the business.
Even my own dog, yeah. That's the point. If you hear some heavy panting, it's not me. He's hot and bothered already.
Lovely.
Not even nearly 10 yet. So
But in terms of getting, one of the key things you learn is about people. You learn about how organizations work. You learn at the nitty gritty. There's what the marketing department or strategy people say the business is doing. What when your organization are pitching to venture capitalists or investors, this is what we do. But when you work with the data, you find out what's actually being done.
mm.
You find out, is this actually going to be working? Is this actually achievable? And it's not the fancy, technical, nerdy database end of the world where the interesting stuff happens. Because there's lots of really cool stuff happening in the data science world. I will not use the phrase artificial intelligence, machine learning, or Bitcoin or blockchain at
I was
all for the
literally
rest
just
of the
about
session.
to ask you if you could think of two types of advice to offer any newcomers coming into the industry, what would they be? And I feel like that would be one of them. Do not use those words.
Don't use those words. That just shows that you've Googled a few things. More importantly, advice for people coming in: whatever you think you need to know is wrong, and whatever people tell you you need to know is probably wrong, because it's going to be an overlap of things. Like, I qualified as an Oracle DBA back in 2002
Mhm.
because I was on the business
Just
side.
for people listening, a DBA, database
Database
analyst.
administrator.
Okay.
Database administrator.
See, I was thinking a data analyst.
Uber techie nerd, god mode data guy at the technical level. The reason I took that qualification was I was on the business side with a law degree, and I knew I was being lied to by our systems integrator. So I qualified to know when they were bullshitting me.
Okay.
Now, I have never used that beyond that period, but the study did. The course of study went through quite a lot of stuff around fundamentals of technology, fundamentals of data systems, fundamentals of data design, data modeling, really, really useful technical level knowledge that I was able to build on. A lot of what I already knew.
So you'd say that kind of when you're wanting to learn what's going on is learning about the thing that's not necessarily attached to your industry, but
Oh,
learning about that thing helps you learn more about what you can do.
learning about other things, cross training.
Mm.
Like, if you, I practice martial arts. I've trained in a couple of different styles of martial arts, and one thing I love doing, used to be able to do years ago with one of my best friends. He was living in the UK at the time. I'd go over to visit, usually around conferences. I'd crash with him for a night or two after the conference, and we go to his local sports center, and we would knock 7 bells out of each other for 4 hours, because that's what you do in your friends. But we were basically sparring using different styles of martial arts, and it was cross training, looking to see what would work, what could we learn from different things we've been practicing. And it's the same with data management. Like, there's areas that I won't go into the detail of because there's no way I would know the detail. Like, when you get into records management, Emily, I'm sorry, we're not worthy. Okay. But
I
when you
was
move,
going to ask, what do you not know? What's topics that make you feel uncomfortable?
detailed technical cybersecurity, because the field moves so fast and you need to be really, really, really at the top level of your game there all the time. I know enough to know how to point people at the right things to ask. And I know enough people that I can bring people in to help clients get the answers they need. Just doing it with a client at the moment where I suspect a data breach. And when we did our initial pass through, I said, right, there's a risk here. You need to get a forensic audit done to make sure there's no bad presence left anywhere on your network.
Mhm.
So they've had a full sweep done. Not in our skill set. I could learn it, or I could hire someone to do it. And
I was about to say,
that's one of the key skills that you need to learn as you progress through this, is knowing where your deep knowledge is, knowing where your comfort zone is, but also knowing who you can trust to bring in to help. And that's where our associates network in Castlebridge is important and useful to us, because we have that pool of deep expertise in various areas that we can bring in on specific things for clients. We don't have to build it all ourselves. There's lots of things I don't know lots about. I'm a bit like Henry's cat. I know everything about nothing and not too much about that.
Okay.
But and that for all the kids listening, just Google Henry's cat. But the most important thing you need to know is actually what the limit of your knowledge is. There are too many people out there who think that because they have an understanding of one part of information management, they're automatically an expert on data protection. No.
There's people out there that say that they're records management consultants, and I'm like, really? But
Yeah.
there we have it. So I'm very aware of keeping timings and not boring people too much, because I would just sit and talk to you for the day, but we don't have that time. One of the things that I would like to ask you is, what was your most favorite job of all of them?
My most favorite job.
Like, I'm not including Castlebridge, because that's your own baby.
My most favorite job of all.
Or like the thing that happened that's the most memorable, maybe.
Working on movies. I worked on a number of movies in the 90s as an exterior set dresser. So all the stuff you see in movies where something is either old or futuristic or different to what it is in the real world, somebody has to do that. And that job taught me a hell of a lot about deadlines, managing team, and data, because in the prop store, we had to keep a track of what we had, where it was, if it was broken, and where it needed to go, and what van was it on. There was a whole logistics supply chain thing that needed to be managed there. And
I know that feeling, as I'm managing off-site storages and knowing what records are on what van.
It's basically the same discipline. And the only difference between that and records management is that when I was doing that, I could go drinking with Alan Rickman. And that was fun.
You met the god, Alan Rickman.
Yep, and Liam Neeson.
Can I like shake your hand? Does your hand still have their handprint on it? Have you washed it since?
Unfortunately not. But working on movies was a fantastic training ground for just discipline and the focus on just getting the job done. It also taught me that it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be done. But it needs to be done to a level where it looks good and that it meets the need. So it's about defining what the expectation is and what the definition of done is. Because there were lots of times where we would have something set up, and when the camera pointed at it, it looked odd. It didn't fit, and we had to go and reframe and reset the scene so that it would work. And
it's about knowing your information and knowing your sort of like your historical interest when you're trying to match things with sets and the data that relates to that.
Well, thankfully, the props masters took care of all that. One of the things we had to look for was the data that doesn't necessarily look important, but actually is really important. A lot of times on a movie set, with exterior sets in particular, you'll have props or something that looks trivial or innocuous, but it's actually the mark for the framing of the camera and the focus. Rather than putting tape down on the floor, they might put a straw bale in a particular location, and the actor has to stand at that straw bale to be in frame.
Oh, okay.
If you move the straw bale or you move the small item, the director of photography throws coffee at you.
Oh, okay. Right.
But that teaches you an awful lot about the significance of small data.
You
need to understand the context of use of data to understand its importance. And if you don't have that context, you might do something stupid and a regulator will throw coffee at you.
That's true. I want to go into now What would you say has been your pinnacle moment in your career? Like, what has there been a part where you've gone, do you know what? I've made it. I've I've I've
The
I've
day
reached it.
the day I feel that way, Emily, is the day I get really, really worried. The only easy day was yesterday. There's lots of really interesting projects I've worked on. There are projects I'm working on at the moment that I can't discuss that are significant and are of social value, not just commercial value. Um,
Would you say there's the instead of pinnacle moment, there's a point where you think, I can't believe it's me they've chosen. So like
oh no, I'm incredibly arrogant. I'm not surprised when they've chosen me. No, it's more. It's not a pinnacle moment. It's that little moment where I see the light bulbs going on in people's eyes.
Mhm.
I see the realization from everyone from a cost from the lowest grunt in an organization all the way to senior executives. It's that moment when they go, this is why it's important. This is why I need to do it. That's the really important piece. I suppose the most fun I've had recently, and the kind of the bit that gives me most personal pleasure was when my daughter interviewed someone from the Data Protection Commission about children's rights for our podcast. And it wasn't the podcast, it was going through the preparation with her first and seeing where she was thinking and where her issues and concerns were. That gave me a little bit of hope that maybe.
I'm not gonna lie, like when you unleash Minnie O'Brien to the world is going to be interesting. It's like I can't wait actually. I'm very excited.
All I can do is equip my child in the best way possible to deal with the world. It's up to the world how it deals with my child.
Run
But
away!
yeah, but ultimately, for me, it's every day brings a new interesting thing, a new thing to learn, and really the pinnacle moment is seeing the light bulbs go on in people's eyes. I suppose the best from a professional perspective, the most kind of pinnacle moment I had was understanding the power of a crowd. But two things I did. Once when I was the director of publicity for the International Association for Information Data Quality, IQ International, now sadly gone. It's merged into the IIBA. I got 300 people chanting along with the company, with the organization's mission and ethos in the style of the Cat in the Hat at a conference. And a few years later, doing a lightning talk at Enterprise Data World, I was talking about the need to open our thinking up as information management professionals and make connections, make networks, and understand different disciplines. And I threw in a picture of Leonard Cohen for some reason. And I could spot all the Canadians in the room because they all stood up and started saluting. Because Leonard Cohen is the patron saint of Canada. But
I'm learning so much in this session already. I'm like, wow, okay.
the key thing is the pinnacle is, and Scott Salmons will probably echo this, is that when you understand the levers and the things that trigger people, it's really interesting how you can get them to think differently about stuff. Mm-hmm. And those light bulbs going off in people's heads. The time a call center agent in a client came up to me and said, now I understand this. How do I learn about this? That for me was an important thing. Because that showed that there was momentum, there was ground up momentum to actually fix these problems. And people were seeing it not as the cost of doing business, but as something that could actually be fixed and avoided.
Okay. So I like to kind of address, we've talked about the best things that happened or the pinnacle side of things or those kind of things, but is there a moment in your life where I've just pressed that button that I'm about to implode my career? Oh my God, what have I just done? My worst mistake. What have I, has there been any of those that
Tuesday, as it's also known.
Sorry?
Tuesday, as it's also known. Yeah. Working in regulatory, that's the job. The job is to go to people and say, you can't do that this way. when I was in a phone company, part of my job was telling senior management, heads of product development, you cannot deploy that product.
Okay.
You haven't done this, this, and this.
I'm more talking about a personal impact of thinking you might go home that night and go, oh God, I don't know what I can do tomorrow. Is the like tomorrow's job, is it going to be there?
Every day. The only easy day was yesterday, Emily. When you're self-employed, and there are there are always days when you feel that way. And the issue, the challenge then is to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on. Learn from it.
And that's what I'm kind of trying to get at, because like I mean, my friends back home will say to me, you know, things will knock me down, but I'll soon dust myself off and get up again. I've always been managed to have a recovery kind of thing, and I think that's important for newcomers, or hopefully who are watching this series, is to think, you know, something might feel absolutely terrible at the time, or you've done something you shouldn't have done, but the recovery is the most important part.
That's I worked for a fantastic business unit director in the phone company, a guy called John Thompson. Absolute visionary in project and program management and strategy. I learned so much from him over the 12 years I worked for him. And his mantra was the only failure is not learning.
Yeah, I'd agree with
You
that.
can go wrong, you will recover. There will be ways of fixing it. But if you don't learn from it and you do it again, that's unforgivable. And not from externally, internally, you need to learn and you need to make sure you're pushing yourself to learn from the error. And that means having to be brutally objective with yourself.
Okay.
And actually take the time to say, well, what happened there? Why did it happen? Doing root cause analysis. Why did this thing happen?
Yeah.
Was it that I was tired? Was it that I was overloaded? Was it that I misunderstood the client brief? Was it that we hadn't clearly defined the statement of work? Was it the client's expectations of what could be delivered were wildly at odds to the reality of what was possible to deliver? Or did the client have total blinkers on about something that when we told them it was not a thing that could be done, they didn't like to hear that? And the question then is, was that your job to tell them the thing they didn't want to hear?
Yeah.
And the only mistake is not learning from that. And that's something I've learned over the years in music, martial arts, the stuff I do outside of work. The only person worth competing against is yourself, because the only person who can defeat you is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Um. So this is the whole thing behind this vlog. I'm like podcast, YouTube, vlog thing, recording, whatever you want to, silver filers, um, and making sure that whatever we talk about relates to, you know, your career and how it went, but also looking at the advice that you would give to new people coming in. With that in mind, the is there anyone out there that they may not be around anymore, or they may still be but maybe retired, that you would say is that I looked up to that person and I wanted to be them?
People often say, don't meet your heroes. I'm really lucky in the data management world. I've actually met most of my heroes, and I'm friends with most of them now, which is weird.
Who are
People that I really looked up to and learned a lot from: Larry English, who sadly died last year, pioneer in the world of information quality management, but also Dr. Tom Rebbe, another pioneer in the world of information quality management, and someone who phones me every 3 months. I'll get an email from Tom going, we haven't talked, let's catch up. And I'm involved in a couple of things with Tom internationally now as well. John Ladley, who is like my crazy American uncle in data management world, data governance pioneer, really good friend. These are people who I not just from a professional perspective, but from a personal perspective, have given me phenomenal guidance and encouragement in life. Danette McGilvray, data quality pioneer, wonderful woman. I've learned so much from her about how to be humble about what you do, but at the same time being absolutely the dogs McClatchies at what you do. Michelle Dennedy goes without saying, in the world of data protection, data privacy. Michelle, my crazy American sister, as she sometimes refers to herself. I learned so much from her about how.
We should be having Michelle on Silver Filers as
Oh
well.
yeah, you should have Michelle on. What I've learned from her is that it's okay to just be yourself and go for it. Like, she was the first chief privacy officer in Silicon Valley because she wrote to Scott McNealy and said, "You need to have this thing's going to be important. We need to put someone in charge of it." And he went, "Yeah, you're in charge of it now." And there's lots of other people like Bob Seiner on tdan.com, loads of people. And that's and Pat, obviously Pat. I cannot ignore Pat.
We're talking about Pat Walsh, yeah?
Yeah, Pat Walsh, fantastic, generous with his time, generous with his encouragement, and constructive in his criticism. And these are valuable people in my network. I look up to them, I respect them, and I really hope that I'm bringing something to the table for them as well. And for anyone starting out, don't be afraid at an event or a conference, or even actually Tom Peters, another name just pops in. Not a personal connection, but he the author of the seminal book on information strategy in search of excellence. I've had fantastic banter with Tom Peters on Twitter. So anyone starting out, don't be afraid to connect with and reach out to people who inspire you. Even if all you're doing is writing a review on Amazon or wherever about a book, or you're commenting on something they're doing on Twitter. As long as you're respectful, as long as you're not an asshat about what you're saying and you're not picking a fight, people will tend to react and engage with you positively.
I've had people at post events go, "I was too scared to come and say hello," and I'm like, "Why? I don't bite unless you ask." Like,
come up. We met in person at an event 2 years ago. We'd been bantering on Twitter for a while before that. It was the IRMS conference in Cardiff was the first time we actually met in person, I think.
no, I've seen you before, but I just don't think we had actually ever spoken.
But the key thing is just to you won't know whether this person is someone who is interesting to talk to and fun to talk to and might be someone you can learn from unless you go and talk to them. And just the real advice I give to anyone starting is be yourself. Don't try and be someone else, because that job is already taken.
Yeah.
And what you bring to the table in terms of your interests, your background, your experience, and your ability to learn is what sets you out and will help you progress in your career.
So we're coming to the end of this, and I've just got a couple more, hopefully quick questions. If you was to recommend any books that you would like to suggest to your readers, and yours is included, it's allowed to be shown.
Okay.
So if you've got your hands on it. I'm actually sorting my desk.
I just popped off camera for a second to get some books from my archive, and I've knocked a few things off the desk in the process. Well, obviously, ethical data and information management.
Oh, it's not showing too well. Your camera's voiding it out.
Well, that's because I got my fake background on. That's okay. No.
There we go. We can see the wording at least. There we go.
Okay. I'll send you a list of these books, and you can put it up.
Yeah, and we'll put them in the information below.
Because this is a wonderful white book, Business and Intelligence by Barry Devlin, the man who invented data warehousing. Fantastic book about the history of data management, not just data management concepts. Data Modeling Essentials by Graham Simpson. And if you're buying Data Modeling Essentials, get the 3rd edition. And if you're buying it, you might as well buy all of Graham's other books, such as The Rosie Project, The Rosie Effect, and The Rosie Result. Graham is an example of what can happen when you decide you don't want to work in data management anymore. He's become a highly successful romantic novelist.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And he's very, very good. Another good guy who I look up to and I've learned a lot from. And finally, just out this week, Executing Data Quality Projects, 10 Steps, 2nd edition by Danette McGilvray. An excellent book. And then there's other ones as well I'd recommend. I'll send you a list.
Yeah, please do. Um,
And dataleaders.org will be publishing a bibliography of recommended reading for people getting into data management. Not just data books, but also a broader array of topics that those of us who've been around a long time have read and reference a lot. So I'll send you a link to that once it's published as well.
a couple of silly questions. Um, if you're stranded on an island, who's the
Yep.
one person that you take with you in the industry? Like, I appreciate
John
you.
Zachman, because he used to be in the Navy, he knows how to build boats.
Say that again.
John Zachman, he used to be in the Navy. He knows about boats.
And of all those books, which book would you take? Like your absolute.
Well, Data Modeling Essentials is the biggest, and it's on the softest paper.
You can use it as fuel if needed.
Yes, fuel. We can use it as fuel.
If you could swap careers now without having to retrain, but go in at the level you are now in a new career, would you, and what would it be?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Given that my career now is essentially chief troubleshooter for things in data, what would I do? What other career? Captain of the Enterprise.
Scott will be proud.
And Scott can be my number one. That's okay. He can put the shields up. We'll let him do that.
He could be Data.
Maybe.
Let's leave that on a laughing moment then. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us, Daragh. It's been absolute ball. I've learnt stuff, and I hope the listeners have learnt stuff. So thank you very much from me to you.
Thanks, Emily.
And we shall say goodbye for now. So thanks very much, Daragh, and bye for now.
Bye, everyone.